Hello, I'm Dr. George Lupko, the Lung Disease Center of Central Pennsylvania. Thanks for watching. I'm going to be talking today about masking and the importance of wearing a mask during this COVID-19 epidemic. Before we do this, though, I want to give you a little context because it's important to know why masking is important. Let's talk about how virus and virus infections are transmitted. In this COVID epidemic, we know that there's at least 3 ways, and actually most virus epidemics have 3 ways. And they all boil down to these little water particles that we spit out while we're talking or laughing or coughing. So these little water particles that we're spitting out through our mouth and our nose contain the virus particles if you're infected. Some of these virus particles are large and some are small, so there are really 2 types. The large ones actually are heavy enough to fall. That when we spit them out, they go out about 3 or 4 feet and they fall to the ground. But if there's a tabletop there or a countertop, they're going to fall on that countertop. And if you touch the countertop, those virus particles are alive in those little particles for at least several hours. You catch them on your hands, and then you touch your face, your eyes, someone else's face, your lips, and you infect yourself. So the first way in which virus particles are transmitted and viruses are transmitted is through contact, what we call contact. So you're touching something, you get it on your hands, and then you touch your face. The large particles now go out about 3 or 4 feet, and then they drop down. So if you're outside that perimeter, if you're beyond 3 or 4 feet, say 6 feet, you're not going to, well, probably not going to contact those particles, and the risk of you getting infected is less. So if you're not protected, if you don't have a mask on, and certainly if the person you're talking to doesn't have a mask on, you need to stay at least 6 feet away. That gives you a couple feet of play between where those particles will fall and where you're standing. The last particles that we want to talk about are the very small ones. These are called aerosols. So aerosolization is one of the ways in which the virus particles are spread. These particles are very small and are picked up by the currents of air in the room, like this room we're in right now. And they stay there for quite some time. And so if you leave or move away, those particles are still there. And if someone walks through that cloud, breathes in those particles, they can get infected. So those are the 3 ways in which virus diseases, this COVID pandemic, is being transmitted: contact, large droplets, and aerosolization. How do we protect ourselves against this? Well, it's pretty easy to understand since I've told you that contact is one way. Don't contact. Keep your hands washed, okay? Keep them off surfaces that you don't have to have them on. And people who own restaurants and stores and such have to clean those surfaces to make sure the particles aren't there. So contact is one way, and we prevent that from happening by washing our hands and keeping them away from our face. The large droplets, of course, as I said, travel about 3 or 4 feet and drop down to the ground. And those particles can be prevented from hitting you by staying 6 feet apart. That's where social distancing is really important. And that's how we got the recommendation for social distancing as being about 6 feet because of this transmission of 3 or 4 feet of these large particles. Aerosolization is a bit more difficult because these particles are floating around in the air, so not allowing them to get out into the atmosphere, into the room, is really important. And this is where masking, both for the large droplets and the aerosolization, are really important by keeping them from getting out into the room where others are. Okay, so this is how we protect ourselves from this COVID epidemic and spread. Now, how do we get people to do this? How do we get people to wear a mask? There's been a lot of controversy, and I don't want to create any more polarization or controversy over this. Initially, we were concerned that some of the masks were not available for healthcare workers, particularly these ones called N95s, which are only really for healthcare workers. So the recommendation was don't wear masks. But in fact, we know now that wearing masks can help prevent the spread of this infection. But how do we get people to do it? Well, in some places, they've created what's called mandates. They said, you have to wear this mask. this creates a lot of trouble for some people. They think that this is against the law, it's against their freedom, etc. But you know what? We follow mandates all the time, don't we? We know that wearing our seatbelt is mandated. We know that wearing a helmet for driving our motorcycle. We know that staying at the speed limit is appropriate. And why? Why are these mandates there, and why do we follow them? We do that because these mandates and these behaviors preventing us save lives. They save lives. That's the key. Okay? So when there's a mandate to wear this mask, it's not just to prevent you from exercising your freedoms. It's because we know that wearing this mask will help prevent the spread of this infection and save lives. In closing, here's what I want to tell you. That the real concern here, and remember, some of the people who have this infection are asymptomatic. They have no symptoms. In fact, about 40 to 45% of patients who are infected with COVID do not have any symptoms. So if someone says, well, I feel wonderful, I feel good, I don't need to wear this mask, and you agree with them and you're standing there talking to them inside that 3 or 4 foot perimeter, he could be shedding virus or she could be shedding virus all over you. Okay, so the other thing is some of the patients who actually get infected and will get sick do not have symptoms for the first 3 or 4 days. And they're still shedding virus. So they could be talking to you, not yet sick, not having symptoms, and spitting out these virus particles in these little water droplets. So you don't know whether or not you are infected or someone else is infected. That's why wearing the mask is so important. It protects the people around you. That's really what it's protecting. It's protecting others. And if you don't want to do that, I don't know what that says about you, that you don't want to help your fellow citizen, your fellow brothers and sisters from getting this infection. So wearing the mask is important that way. And I want to tell you that at least half of all COVID infections are transmitted by people who are asymptomatic. Asymptomatic. So the asymptomatic people are really important, and the masks really help us in that regard. So in closing, I'm going to say, look, it's really important that you wear the mask. I hope you remain safe. Wash your hands, okay? Social distance, wear the mask, and I look forward to seeing you in some future date.